Alrighty. Hello, everybody. How we doing today? Hello, hello. Alright. Oh, yeah, you can hear me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Whistler's Cryptid podcast. I am your host, DeathSpread 813, coming back with a specific one this time. And what I could have swore we covered in the past, but I guess not. I thought we did the Mothman. I know we've definitely talked about it in a good amount of what do you call it? Episodes on this podcast. But apparently we haven't talked about it, so we're going to talk about it today. And this is a suggestion by my boss at work. So, to you, sir, thank you. But, what are we doing? What is this? If this is your first time watching a Whistler's Cryptid podcast, let's give a quick recap. The Whistler's Cryptid podcast is a podcast that I do where we take about an hour and 15 sometimes longer, but rarely. We take a long, in-depth, deep dive look at different cryptids around the world. Sometimes they'll be in America, sometimes they'll be in Mexico or Colombia, wherever. Wherever the winds take us is wherever we go. And this week we are doing the Mothman, which is, I believe, centered in West Virginia. And normally I don't do any sort of prior to research, all right? And that's one of the things that is important to understand about this podcast series. The Whistler's Cryptid podcast is a podcast. Oh, let me send out the link to Discord. There we go. The Whistler's Cryptid podcast is a podcast that touches a lot of cultures. Put it that way. We do a lot of cryptids from around the world, and as such, you can't have a cryptid and understand it and have an idea of what it is without going into the deep diving cultural impact that it has on the surrounding locals. Whether that be the Thunderbird, which of Native American folklore, or whatever, what have you. There's 101 ways that a cryptid can have an impact on or from the local culture. And I do my best to respect the culture, and we take everything at face value, and we take everything assuming that there's a chance it could be real. I'm not going to say we have a confirmation bias at all or anything like that, but we certainly don't look away. So if you have any questions about what exactly we do here, it's just that. We do research on the internet. We're armchair cryptid zoologists, and when I say we, I mean me, and that's about all it is. So it's pretty fun. Pretty chill, pretty relaxed. Something that you can really just kind of put on in the background and relax to and listen to different things. One thing that we do a lot of is rereading verbatim articles online. So we're going to have a lot of that this week, but let's jump right into it. So the Mothman. All right. The Mothman is, from my understanding, so you know where I'm coming from going into the subject, a harbinger of bad events yet to happen that is, it's a Mothman. The description's in the title. He is a man-moth hybrid. So the Mothman is very famous for many reasons. Meme culture is definitely one. Fallout 76 is definitely another that had a huge impact on the Mothman legend in my experience. And beyond both of those, just generally speaking, the Mothman is pretty well known. It's a very unique cryptid. It's very well known for the bridge that collapsed, being spotted right before the collapse of itself, which I think is where the legend of it being a harbinger of bad events comes in. And yeah, that's really it. I don't know if it's seen as an evil entity or anything like that. And that's all I got. So, welcome to the Cryptid Podcast. Hope you guys are ready for the Mothman, and let's jump right into it. Now, one thing I know has been questioned on this podcast series is our use of Wikipedia. I go hard into Wikipedia a lot, and on one hand, yes, it's true, anybody can edit anything that they want. On the other hand, it is the modern day Library of Alexandria where all of human knowledge and history can be accessed in one website. I don't see a reason to shun Wikipedia for the misuse and mishandling of it from other people. Therefore, I have personally trust in Wikipedia, and as such, my thought is let's just see where, at the very least, the cultural zeitgeist is at with the Mothman. And again, for these for these episodes, for this podcast, the whole point of them is we just read verbatim and make our own conclusions. And obviously, this is a very surface level introduction to all these cryptids. So if you ever want to do more research, please, I heavily encourage you to do so. Last housekeeping on before we start reading, don't randomly click on links. I know what I'm doing. I know how to be safe. I know how to be careful with this sort of stuff and to keep my personal internet protected. I don't want to have anybody out there putting themselves at risk. So as such, be careful when you're clicking around on the internet. That said, I'm going to be clicking around on the internet. So, last week we went over the Not Deer. This week, we're doing the Mothman. This is a series every Monday, 7 p.m. on this channel. And let's stop stalling after 6 minutes and jump right in. Mothman, in West Virginian folklore, is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 1566 to December 1567. Despite its name, the original sightings of the creature described avian features. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16, 1966, titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. We are going to open this in a new tab. The source of the legend is believed to have originated from sightings of out-of-migration sandhill cranes or herons. The creature was introduced to a wider audience in Gray Barker in 1970 and was later popularized by John Keel in his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, claiming that there was a paranormal event related to the sightings in connection to the collapse of the Silver Bridge. And there we go. That's where the big one comes in. We'll get to that. Don't you worry. The book was later adapted in 2002 film starring Richard G. An annual festival in Point Pleasant is devoted to the Mothman legend. History. November 15th, 1966, two young couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Maletta, told police they had seen a large black creature whose eyes glowed red, standing at the side of the road near the TNT area, the site of a former World War II munitions plant. Linda Scarberry described it as a slender, muscular man about 7 feet tall with his white wings. However, she was unable to discern its face due to the hypnotic effect of its eyes. Distressed, the witnesses sped away. Whoops, what the heck? Okay. I must have clicked the button on the side of my mouse. There we go. Distressed, the witnesses sped away, reporting that the creature flew after their car, making a screeching sound. It pursued them as far as Point Pleasant city limits. Over the next few days, more people reported similar sightings after local newspapers covered it. Two volunteer firemen said it said it was a large bird with red eyes. Mason County Sheriff George Johnson believed these sightings were due to an unusually large heron he termed Shipepoke. Contractor Newell Partridge told Johnson that when he aimed a flashlight at a creature in a nearby field, its eyes glowed, quote, like bicycle reflectors, end quote. Additionally, he blamed buzzing noises from his television set and the disappearance of his German Shepherd dog on the creature. Oof. Wildlife biologist Robert L. Smith at West Virginia University, I apologize, told reporters that descriptions and sightings fit the sandhill crane, a large American crane that almost as tall as a man with 7-foot wingspan and reddish coloring around its eyes. The bird may have wandered out of its migration route and therefore was unrecognized at first because it was not native to the region. So a lot of herons and cranes, basically. Due to the popularity of the Batman TV series at the time, the fictional superhero Batman and his rogues gallery were prominently featured in the public eye. While the villain Killer Moth did not appear in the show, the comic book influence of both him and Batman is believed by some to have influenced the coinage of the term Mothman into local newspapers. Following December 15th, 1967, collapse of the Silver Bridge and the death of 46 people, the incident gave rise to the legend and connected the Mothman sightings to the bridge collapse. According to Georgian newspaper, that name, Servonia Gruzia. Russian UFOologists claim that the Mothman sightings in Moscow foreshadowed 1999 of Russian apartment bombings. The Mothman prophecies 2002 is a major motion picture loosely based on a 75 book of the same name by John Keel. 2016, WCHS TV. Oh, wait, what am I doing? We have music. Hold on. It's been a long time. Sorry, folks. 1 second. We have background music for this. Hold on. You don't need to listen to just me rattle all this nonsense on. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Open with. There we go. Sorry, everybody. Alright. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's turn it down just a tad. I completely forgot. Some smooth jazz. Okay, moving on. In 2016, WCHS TV published a photo purported to be of a Mothman taken by an anonymous man while driving on Route 2 in Mason County. Since science writer Sharon A. Hill proposed that the photo showed, quote, a bird, perhaps an owl, carrying a frog or snake away, end quote, and wrote that, quote, there is zero reason to suspect that it is the Mothman described in the legend. There are far too many more reasonable explanations, end quote. Well, you're no fun, are you, Sharon? Analysis. Folklorist Jan Harold Boudvan notes that the Mothman has been widely covered in popular press, while with some claiming sightings connected with UFOs and others suggesting that a military storage site was Mothman's home. Jan notes that the recountings of the 6667 Mothman reports usually state that at least 100 people saw Mothman, with many more, quote, afraid to report their sightings, end quote. However, he points out that these written sources for such stories consisted of children's books or sensationalized or undocumented accounts that fail to quote identifiable persons. Jan found elements in common among many Mothman reports, and much older folktales, suggesting that something real may have triggered the scares and become woven with existing folklore. He also records anecdotal tales of Mothman supposedly attacking the roofs of parked cars occupied by teenagers. Sorry, it made me think of something. The word anecdotal, I use it like 2 or 3 times. To my mother, she goes, I'm mom! She just stopped there. She meant, I don't know what that word means. But anyway. Conversely, Joe Nickel. Really? His last name is Nickel? He looks like a Joe Nickel, actually. Never mind. Says that a number of hoaxes follow the publicity generated by the original report, such as a group of construction workers who tied flashlights to helium balloons. I was mixing balloons and helium. Aluminum. Nickel. We got helium and nickel. Nickel attributes the Mothman stories to, I'm making myself laugh, to sightings of barred owls, suggesting that the Mothman's glowing eyes were actually red eye effect caused by the reflection of light from flashlights or bright light sources. Oh, anyway. Benjamin Radford points out that the only report of glowing, quote, red eyes, end quote, was secondhand, that of Shirley Hansley quoting her father. One of the prevailing hypotheses associated with the Mothman at the time of the original sightings was that it was a misidentified sandhill crane due to primarily the size of the bird as well as the, quote, reddish flesh, end quote, around the crane's eyes. Daniel A. Reed examined the migration patterns and historically reported sightings of sandhill cranes in the area of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and proposed that in cases where eye shine was not noted, it was statistically more likely that eyewitnesses were seeing and misidentifying a great blue heron instead. According to University of Chicago psychologist David A. Gallo, 55 inch? Oh, I'm stupid. Quote, 55 sightings of Mothman in Chicago in 2017, end quote, published on the website of self-described 14 researcher, don't really know what a 14 researcher is, Lon Strickler, are, quote, a selective sample, end quote. Gallo explains that, quote, he's not sampling random people and asking if they saw the Mothman. He's just counting the number of people that voluntarily came forward to report such a sighting, end quote. That's fair. According to Gallo, quote, people more likely to visit a paranormal-centric website like Stickler's might also be more inclined to believe in and therefore witness the existence of a, air quote, Mothman, end air quote, end quote. Some pseudoscientist adherents, such as ufologists, paranormal authors, and cryptozoologists, suggest that the Mothman could be an alien, supernatural manifestation, or a previously known species of animal. In his 1975 book, Keel claimed that Point Pleasant residents experienced precognitions, including premonitions of the collapse of the Silver Bridge, UFO sightings, visits from the Inhuman, or threatening Men in Black and other phenomena. The Men in Black is one we definitely got to go over one day. That's a whole rabbit hole that could make a 3-hour podcast. Festivals and statues. Point Pleasant held its first annual Mothman Festival in 2002. The Mothman Festival began after brainstorming creative ways to attract visitors to Point Pleasant. The group organizing the event chose the Mothman to be the center of the festival due to its uniqueness and as a way to celebrate its local legacy in town. That's honestly pretty fair. According to the event organizer Jeff Wamsley, the average attendance for the Mothman Festival is an estimated 10 to 12,000 people per year. 10 to 12,000? Holy! I mean, I knew it was popular, but jeez. Forgive me. A 12-foot tall metallic statue of the creature created by an artist sculptor Bob Roach was unveiled in 2003. The Mothman Museum and Research Center opened in 2005. The festival is held on the third weekend of every September, hosting guest speakers, vendor exhibits, pancake eating contests, and hayride tours of locally notable areas. I'm sorry, pancake eating contests? What is the best thing you could think of while hosting a Mothman event at the local area where the Mothman originated from? I have an idea. Yes, John. Pancake eating contest. You know what? Power to you. That is a way to keep people around. All right. In pop culture, because again, the zeitgeist of the cultural phenomena of these cryptids really influences how we see, view, and talk about these cryptids. As such, it's always important whenever we're reading these wiki articles to talk about the pop culture sections of the articles. So the Mothman's Prophecies in 1975 was a book by John Keel and is largely responsible for popularizing the legend. The Mothman's Prophecies 2002 is a film inspired by Keel's book. Mothman 2010, a sci-fi TV movie. So, you know, sci-fi TV movie. Mothman 2010, Season 4, Episode 5 of Monster Quest. Monster Quest, I don't remember that. Now, Mothman at Point Pleasant is a documentary from 2017. The Mothman Menace. The Menace of the Mothman. 2023, a fictionalized account of the Silver Bridge collapse and other historical events. 1960s Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Craig McDonald was the author. And the Mothman Revisited, 2024, Volume 4, Episode 5, Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. Ooh, maybe I have to watch that. It was in other appearances in Watchmen in 1986. It features a minor superhero known as Mothman. Megami Tensei, 1995. Mothman regularly appears as a recruitable demon in the Megami Tensei series of games, first appearing in Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner. Detour, 1997, an episode of The X-Files in which Agent Mulder hypothesizes that the monster could be related to the Mothman in Point Pleasant. Okay, that's a deep cut. The Perhapanauts, 2005, a Mothman named Carl appears as a supporting protagonist. Carl, the Mothman. I'm going to start calling him Carl. The Adventure Zone, Amnesty. 2018, the Mothman Indrid, oh my word, Cole. The Mothman Indrid Cold is revealed to be one of the several alien beings crossing into the West Virginia portion of the National Radio Quiet Zone from another world. Fall 76, whoop whoop. 2018, I thought it was like 2016. Multiple Mothmen appear as some of the many cryptids inhabiting a post-apocalyptic West Virginia. Yeah, I certainly vouch for that one. Inside Job 2021, a humorous version of the creature known as Elliot Mothman appears. He works for a shadowy organization known as Cognito Inc., specifically as the head of HR. Alright, that's pretty funny. That's funny. An illustrated Oracle desk called the Southern Gothic Oracle has an expansion pack called The Haunt, which features Mothman card 2021. And finally, the Adventure Zone Dust Season 2 2022. Indrid Cold returns as a player character portrayed by Griffin McElroy. Thank you for subscribing. I'm struggling to see who that was, but thank you so much for subbing. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And of course, you have welcome to the channel. You have all the see also list of West Virginia cryptids, apparitional experience, blah 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 blah. So yeah, so that is the Wikipedia article of the Mothman. Now, what we're going to do, my favorite part of these episodes, is go through the different URLs on... I use Firefox, but, just in general, go through the internet and read a few things, see what the what is. And I'm looking here, right? In my eyes, I know all that's interesting. I know the Southern Blueprint. These are all things that we've gone on to before. But I'm seeing Blue Ridge Mountains Traveler's Guide. Blue Ridge Mountain. Actually, let's... So Blue Ridge Mountains are a physiographic province of the larger Appalachian Highlands range. So it is a part of the Appalachian Mountains and a very notable part of the area near Point Pleasant. So it makes sense that the people who are running the Southern Blueprint, running this, I did not click on the right one, the Blue Ridge Mountains Travel Guide, would be right about this. So let's start here. Bit of a longer article, but a high text font and a lot of almost ads, it looks. Hopefully it won't be too long. But let's start reading. So with everything we remember from Wikipedia article, let's see how much it connects to what these guys say. So this was 2023 on May 30th by Emma Gallagher. On November 15th, 1966, two terrified young couples came screaming from the forest in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Oh, and the title of the article is The Appalachian... Ooh, see? That's why you gotta be careful. The Appalachian Legend of Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Alright. On November 15th, 1966, two terrified young couples came screaming from the forest in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Little did they know that their frightening encounter that night would spark an international fascination with an unnerving supernatural creature akin to Bigfoot and the Bell Witch haunting in Tennessee. The Mothman in West Virginia was described as a human-sized bird-like creature with red glowing eyes. Though the 1956 sighting of the Mothman in West Virginia sparked the initial media frenzy, there have been other notable documented sightings of the creature. This Mothman urban legend gained international attention after the publication of John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, which was adapted in a 2002 film starring Richard Gere and Laura Linney. The small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia has really embraced its connection to a mythical creature. Much like Monterey, North Carolina has centered its tourism offerings around native son Andy Griffith, downtown Point Pleasant was designated to pay homage to the Mothman. Read on to learn more about the mysterious Mothman. The Mothman history. Oh, hold on, sorry. Oh, excuse me. Alright. Pardon me. The first Mothman sighting. On November 12, 1966, gravediggers claimed to have witnessed a Point Pleasant, West Virginia Mothman for the first time. Looking up from their work, the gravediggers are said to have seen a bird-like creature as big as a man flying from tree to tree. This was 3 days before the infamous TNT area sighting. It was called that because the 8,000-acre area had been home to an ammunition manufacturing facility during World War II. At that time, explosives were stored in strategically scattered bunkers, which were disguised by a thick layer of earth. The TNT area sighting. November 15th, so the first sighting was November 12th, so 3 days later, yeah. On November 15th, 1966, young couples Roger and Linda Scarberry and Stephen Mary Maletti reportedly saw the eyes of the Mothman glowing red in the night. After their encounter with the Mothman monster, the couples claimed that they sped away in their car with the mysterious creature hot on their tails, not trails. The 7-foot-tall screeching monster flew after them from the TNT area, which is about 5 miles north of Point Pleasant, all the way to the city limits, now known as a McClintic Wildlife Management Area. The protected area is home to 180 acres of wetlands, 1,100 acres of bushland, and 1,775 acres of mixed hardwood forest. Built in 1928, the Silver Bridge, commonly known to locals as the Mothman Bridge, connected the towns of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Galapagos, Ohio. I think it's Ohio. On December 15th, 1967, the bridge collapsed under the weight of heavy traffic and tragically killed 46 people. The Silver Memorial Bridge, completed in 1969, now stands in its place. Witnesses reported seeing the Mothman of Point Pleasant flying above the bridge shortly before the disaster. It is said that the West Virginia Mothman has since been spotted in relation to other disasters, both natural and non-human, or both natural and human-made, So is there any truth to the rumors of Mothman curse? Is Mothman's appearance a harbinger of horrors to come? Regardless of personal opinions, these alleged sightings only fuel the fire for the Mothman myths and legends. Mothman monster or sandhill crane? As with all supernatural occurrences, myriad skeptics and experts have tried to come up with rational explanations for mysterious Mothman sightings. Mason County Sheriff George Johnson believed that the bird-like humanoid was actually an oversized heron. His idea was backed by wildlife biologist Robert L. Smith of West Virginia University, who confirmed that the description of the Mothman was a very close match to that of the sandhill crane. This large North American bird stands nearly as tall as an adult man, up to 4 feet 6 inches, with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. It also has red flashes around its eyes, which is a common aspect for the Mothman's description. Though sandhill cranes are not native to this part of the USA, it was believed that the bird may have lost its way during its annual migration. An unfamiliar bird of this size and stature could have understandably alarmed unsuspecting locals. Mothman tourist attractions. There is an array of books, documentaries, and Hollywood movies about the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. But if you've already devoured them all and find yourself wanting more, it might take time to make a pilgrimage to the area and immerse yourself in the Mothman legend. Read on for details. Oh, yeah, okay. So now we're going to talk about the museum. The Mothman Museum is 400 Main Street, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And there's a phone number, I guess, if you want to call them. The Mothman Museum is a must-see for anyone. Is this just turning into an ad? Okay, well, I mean, I guess I might have some details hidden in here. Exhibits include a number of authentic documents, including written accounts of Mothman sightings, press clippings, and photos of the Mothman Bridge collapse. It also houses a large collection of Mothman memorabilia from the Mothman movie, The Mothman Prophecies. You'll also find handwritten police reports of the various Mothman sightings, as well as a purported video footage and accounts of UFO encounters. Open every day, the museum also features a gift shop where visitors can stock up on souvenirs from t-shirts and stickers to DVDs and books. And then you have the hours and mission, blah, 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 blah. The Point Pleasant Mothman statue. So there's a statue. That's, that's a Mothman, all right. Located near the museum in Mothman Park on 4th Street in downtown Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Mothman statue is a hotspot for fans wanting a selfie with this supernatural creature. So it was created by artist Bob Roach from New Haven, West Virginia, and the statue pays homage to the famous 1966 sightings. Sure, it's not the real Mothman, but getting your photo taken as a stainless steel depiction of the monstrous beast is the next best thing. The Mothman statue took a year to make, wow, and was mounted in its permanent home on September 13, 2003. So it was a year after the movie was made then. To make it even spookier, the red eyes of this 13-foot tall statue actually glow at night. That's kind of cool. Though some Point Pleasant residents were said to be unnerved by the statue's haunting visage, the Mothman Prophecies author Keel came to the unveiling. Mothman Festival. According to employees at the Mothman Museum, the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia welcomes more than 10,000 visitors during its annual Mothman Festival, which is crazy. Typically held on the third weekend in September, the festival sees throngs of people gathering on Main Street to celebrate all things Mothman. Visitors can enjoy live music, buy souvenirs from various vendors, eat from a line of food trucks, partake in Mothman cosplay, and hear expert speakers. The annual festival is primarily free, but some attractions do charge a fee. That being said, Town of Point Pleasant tries to most much of the fun free, at least cost effective. Note that the Mothman Museum is especially busy during this weekend, so expect queues this year's. Okay, blah 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 blah. One of the festival's more popular activities is the Silver Memorial Bridge. So let's see if we can zoom in here. So this is a sign. If you're listening to this as a proper podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, this is a sign that is all about the, almost like in memorial of the bridge that collapsed, killed 46. So Silver Bridge collapse. Constructed in 1928, connected Point Pleasant in Conegaw, Ohio. Name credited to aluminum-colored paint used. First I-bar suspension bridge of its type in the U.S. That's cool. Rush hour collapse on December 15th, 1967. Resulted in 31 vehicles falling into river, killing 46, injuring 9. Failed I-bar joint, and weld identified as caused. Resulted in congressional passage of National Bridge Inspected Standards in 1968. You know what? That is actually a positive outcome of a tragedy like that. You know, you have 46 dead people from a collapsing bridge, and I guess the least that you could do is create a uniform national standard on bridge inspections. At least something good came out of it all. Sad it took that, but at least something good came out. Declaration was this, so this was in 2000 when that was made. West Virginia Division of Archives and History, 2006. Cool. Before you leave town, take a moment to pay your respects to the 46 people who lost their lives during the tragic collapse of the Silver Memorial Bridge, built in 1968. The current bridge stands just downriver from the site of the original Silver Bridge, or maybe that sign was made later. I don't know. You can visit a plaque mounted at the site of Silver Bridge disaster, located at 101-199 6th Street in Point Pleasant. Mothman pop culture. There's plenty of content out there to fuel fans' hunger for all things Mothman. Documentaries, books, movies have all tried to capture the Mothman legend and find the elusive answers to ever-popular questions such as who is the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and who is the Mothman real? More than 50 years after the area's first reported sightings, the Mothman legacy continues to live on in the imagination of those who believe in unexpected supernatural phenomena. The Mothman Prophecies book. So here's that famous book. John Keel's book recounts of the alleged sightings of the Point Pleasant Mothman back in 1966 and 1957. It's 67, excuse me. Though it's subtitled A True Story, quote-unquote true story, the book tends to fall towards a more skeptical side of things when it comes to appreciating the Mothman as a supernatural entity. At the same time, no other pop culture creation had done more to further the Mothman myth. The Mothman Prophecies movie. Right, because don't forget, there was a movie made. This 2002 movie, directed by Mark Pellington, propelled the Mothman back into the minds and nightmares of the public. Starring Richard Dree and Laura Linney, the movie centers on the character John Klein, a reporter investigating the Mothman urban legend. His investigation leads him to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where there have been a slew of mysterious sightings. The film is based on actual events that took place in Point Pleasant in 1966 and 67, as described by John Keel in his book, The Mothman of Point Pleasant documentary. In his 2017 documentary, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, director Seth Breedlove investigated the history, legend, and legacy of the Mothman sightings. The Mothman documentary also shares a brief history with the town of Point Pleasant itself by Emma Gallagher, and that's the end of the article. That's pretty interesting. Just kind of like more of a window on how almost locals look at that legend, I suppose you could say. Here's the one I've been waiting for. Ooh, we even have a video on it. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a beast. Okay, so this is written by... excuse me, yawn. Oh, sorry. This is written by Jacelyn Angelis and edited by Maggie Donahue. I am citing this article by showing the sighting on screen. I am even zooming in. This is on allthat'sinteresting.com/Mothman. There you go. It has been cited. All right, we're good. I have been on All That's Interesting before. At this point, I feel comfortable saying if you want some pretty interesting supernatural or weird, I would say, some weird articles, this website is actually kind of good. It's not the usual clickbait website. And for the record, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. It's not an ad. I'm just saying if you like these weird topics, I'm enjoying All That's Interesting. Moving on. I'm going to turn down the music real quick. Alright. Hopefully you guys can hear it. So, meet the Mothman, the horrifying cryptid of West Virginian folklore. August 13th, 2024. Oh, hey. Said to measure 7 feet tall with massive wings and glowing red eyes, the Mothman is a cryptid who has been sighted across West Virginia since the early 1960s. I will look into the Silver Bridge, and don't think I've forgotten about the Russian sighting as well with the Russian bombings. Don't think I forgot about that. On November 12th, 1966, in Clendenin, West Virginia, a group of grave diggers working in a cemetery spotted something strange. Some strange neighborhood. They glanced up from their work as something huge soared over their heads. It was a massive figure that was moving rapidly from tree to tree. The gravediggers would later describe this figure as a brown human being. This was the first reported sighting that would come to be known as a Mothman, an elusive creature that remains as mysterious as it was on the night that a few frightened witnesses first laid eyes on it. The legend of the Mothman equals. I don't know if that equals is on purpose or not. The small town Point Pleasant, West Virginia, along the bank of the Ohio River. So here is, Ohio. So here is the town of Point Pleasant. It's a small town, isn't it? Small rivers, too. Just 3 days after the... Oh, cried out loud. Oh, pardon me. I'm sorry. Okay. Pardon my yawn. Just 3 days after the gravediggers' initial report in nearby Point Pleasant, West Virginia, two couples noticed a white-winged creature about 6 or 7 feet tall standing in front of their car that they were all sitting in. Eyewitnesses Roger Scarberry and Steve Mallett told the local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, that the beast... I'm just noticing here, they have Mallett misspelt here. Out of the 3 articles we're reading, 2 we've already read. There was an E at the end of this, so I'm kind of immediately put off, but typo maybe. Told the local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, that the beast had bright red eyes about 6 inches apart and a wingspan of 10 feet and the apparent urge to avoid the bright headlights of the car. According to witnesses, this creature was able to fly at incredible speeds. Perhaps as fast as 100 miles per hour. All of them agreed that the beast was a clumsy runner on the ground. They knew this only because it allegedly chased their vehicle to the outskirts of town in the air, then scuttled into a nearby field and disappeared. Knowing how absurd this must have sounded to a local paper in a small Appalachian community in the 1960s, Scarberry insisted that the apparition couldn't have been a figment of his imagination. He assured the paper that, quote, if I had seen it while by myself, I wouldn't have said anything. But there were 4 of us who saw it, end quote. More spooky sightings across West Virginia. And here is the statue at night of Mothman. At first, reporters were skeptical. In the papers, they called the Mothman a bird and a mysterious creature. However, they did print Mallett's, second time there's no E, so maybe it's on purpose. Description, quote, it was like a man with wings, end quote. But more and more sightings were reported to the Point Pleasant area over the next year as the legend of Mothman took shape. The Gettysburg Times reported 8 additional sightings in the short span of 3 days after the first claims. This included 2 volunteer firefighters who said they saw, quote, a very large bird with large red eyes, end quote. Newell Partridge, a resident of Salem, West Virginia, claimed that he saw strange patterns appearing on his television screen one night, followed by a mysterious sound just outside of his home. Why is there a link? Oh, okay. Okay, we're gonna interrupt ourselves here. Here is one of the original clippings. November 18th, 1966. 8 people say they saw, quote, creature, end quote. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, UPI. 8 people say they saw a flying creature near the Ohio River community. A dog could have fallen victim to it, and now a Kanawha County gravedigger saw a, quote, brown man, end quote, fly past him last weekend. Kenneth Duncan of Blue Creek near Charleston said he and some other men were digging his brother-in-law's grave on Saturday when something that, quote, looked like a brown human being, end quote, buzzed past. Quote, it was gliding through the trees and was in sight for about a minute, end quote. Duncan said 4 men helping to dig the grave didn't see it. The, quote, thing, unquote, described as a huge bird-like creature with eyes like, quote, unquote, red reflectors, and a wingspan of 10 feet, first was reported to police by Steve Mallett. Okay, there's an E at the end of his name even back then, so why is All Things Interesting not putting the E? That's questionable. And Roger Scarberry and their wives, who said they saw it 3 times late Tuesday and early Wednesday, about 5 miles north of here. I'm thinking that the article continued on another place. Because that doesn't... Actually, no, it doesn't make sense. Never mind. 4 other persons else told Mason County Sheriff George Johnson they saw it in the same general area. And a contractor, Newell Partridge, who lives 100 miles to the north, said he feels it may have had something to do with the disappearance of his $350 German Shepherd dog Bandit. I like how they put the price of the dog. Partridge said he sighted the quote-unquote thing in a meadow near his home in Doddridge County about 90 minutes before the Point Pleasant sightings. Partridge said his television set, quote, began acting like a generator, end quote, and Bandit, quote, started crying on something terrible, end quote. Partridge said he shined a flashlight into the field and saw something with eyes like, quote-unquote, red reflectors. The dog's hair stood straight up, he said, and the animal went into the field. Dog never returned, Partridge said, and there was no trace of it in the morning. That's too bad. Judge said it was not discounting the stories he was told, but said he feels what was seen was nothing more than a, quote, freak shitepoke, end quote, a large bird of the heron family. The shitepoke, sometimes called a shag, is weird names. It is the smallest heron in the Western Hemisphere. Officials were at a loss, however, to explain how a shag could fly at least 100 miles per hour, as Scarberry and Maletti said the creature did. Interesting. So that's the original, one of the original newspaper clippings. That's fascinating. Okay, shining flashlight toward the direction of noise. Partridge supposedly, we're back to the modern day article, supposedly witnessed 2 red eyes resembling bicycle reflectors looking back at him. The anecdote remains a popular one in Mothman mythos, especially since it allegedly led to the disappearance of Partridge's dog. To this day, some still believe that the fearsome beast took his beloved pet. That's too bad. What is a Mothman really? Oh, this is Sandhill Crane. Look how cute it is. It's very cute. Dr. Robert L. Smith, an associate professor of wildlife biology at West Virginia University, dismissed the notion that a flying monster was staking out the town. Instead, he attributed the sightings to a sandhill crane, which stands almost as tall as the average man and has bright red flesh around its eyes. Oh yeah, it is flesh. I thought that was fur. This explanation was compelling, especially given that the number of earlier reports had described the creature as bird-like. Some people hypothesize that this crane was deformed, especially if it resided in the TNT area, a name that locals gave to a series of nearby bunkers that were once used for manufacturing munitions for World War II. It has been suggested that these bunkers have leaked toxic materials into the neighboring wildlife preserve, possibly affecting nearby animals. Oh, interesting. Okay. Another theory suggests that the creation of Mothman was the work of one very committed prankster who was so far as to hide in the abandoned World War II munitions plant where some of the sightings had occurred. Now, why is there a link here? Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I'd rather not open that up. But interesting. Like I said, don't click on random links, people. The laboratory supervisor's office asset area, a part of what locals now refer to as TNT area in 1942. That's pretty cool. This theory points that when the national press ran with the Mothman story, people who lived in Point Pleasant began to panic. Locals became very convinced that they were seeing the Mothman in birds and other large animals, even long after the prankster had given up on the joke. It's worth noting that the Mothman legend bears a resemblance to several demon archetypes found among those who have experienced sleep paralysis, which may suggest that the visions are nothing more than the embodiment of typical human fears, pulled from the depths of the unconscious and gratified onto real-life animal sightings when people panic. And then there are the paranormal explanations and morass of complicated theories that weave together aliens, UFOs, and precognition. These theories paint the Mothman as either a harbinger of doom or, more sinisterly, its cause. A legend that it has its roots in the tragedy that befell Point Pleasant shortly after the Mothman arrived. The Silver Bridge collapse, right? September 15th, 1967, just over a year after the first Mothman sighting. Traffic was bad on Silver Bridge. Originally built in 1928 to connect Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Galapagos, Ohio, the bridge was packed with cars. This placed a strain on the bridge, which had been built in a time when cars were lighter. The Model T weighed just 1,500 pounds, a modest sum compared to the 1967 average for a car 4,000 pounds. The bridge's engineers hadn't been particularly imaginative, nor had they been especially cautious while creating the structure. The bridge's design featured very little redundancy, meaning that if one part failed, there was almost nothing in place to prevent other parts from failing as well. And on that cold December day, this is exactly what happened. Without warning, a single eye bar near the top of the bridge on the Ohio side cracked, the chain snapped, and the bridge, its careful equilibrium disturbed, fell to pieces, plunging cars and pedestrians into the icy water of the Ohio River below. 46 people died either by drowning or being crushed by the wreckage. I'm not going to play this. This appears to be from a proper modern-day news station, and I don't feel like dealing with that. Footage of the wreckage and interviews. Okay. Following the Mothman sightings, the bridge collapse was a second terrible and bizarre thing to put Point Pleasant on a map in a year's time, so it didn't take long for some to connect to. In 1975, author John Keel conflated the Mothman sightings and the Silver Bridge disaster while creating his book, The Mothman Prophecies. He also incorporated UFO activity. The story took hold, and the town soon became iconic among conspiracy theorists, ufologists, and fans of paranormal. And then we go on talk here. Okay, Point Pleasant's fame as the home of the Mothman legend hasn't waned in recent decades. In 2002, a movie based on Keel's book rekindled interest in the Mothman. In the Mothman Prophecies film, Richard Gere, plays a reporter whose wife seems to have witnessed the Mothman shortly before her death. He finds himself inexplicitly in Point Pleasant several years later with no clue how he got there, and he's not the only one having trouble explaining himself. After several locals experienced premonitions of distant disasters, talk of visitations of a mysterious figure called the Mothman. The film, a supernatural horror mystery, offers no conclusions, communicating instead an eerie feeling of disjointedness that was both planned and praised by critics. Most notably, the film popularized the image of the Mothman as a harbinger of doom. And then we have this right here, which is of an actual movie, so I'm definitely not going to be playing that as well. Again, don't really feel like dealing with that. The idea that visitations from the Mothman predicted disaster led some believers to make ties to the Chernobyl disaster of '86. Somehow I knew we were going to talk about Chernobyl, Mexican swine flu of '09, and the 2011 disaster of Fukushima. Bruh, there's no way. There's no way people are tying the Mothman to Fukushima. That's crazy. As for sightings of the actual Mothman, they've mostly declined since the late 1960s, but every so often a sighting emerges. In 2016, a man who had just moved to Point Pleasant spotted a mysterious creature jumping from tree to tree. He claimed to local reporters that he was unaware of the local legend of the Mothman until he allegedly spotted the beast himself. Whether these sightings are real or not, the Mothman can still be seen in Point Pleasant today in the form of a historical museum, and also in the form of a 12-foot tall, chrome-polished statue complete with massive steel wings and ruby red eyes. Furthermore, a festival commemorating the Mothman visits have been taking place annually for years, a fun celebration that attracts locals and tourists alike. Every September, the festival celebrates one of America's strangest local legends that still has people scratching their heads. Okay, so I get the feeling that there's not a whole lot to do from here. So what I would like to do is Russian Mothman sightings. All right, let's see. Nothing new there. All right, here's something interesting. This is on brobible.com. I cannot vouch for any of these websites. As I stated, I enjoy all this interesting. but I don't know how legit that site is. BroBible.com doesn't exactly have a safe-sounding name, in my opinion, but I'm still going to read it. It is by Douglas Charles, October 27th, 2020 at 9:19 a.m. If you're unfamiliar with the tale of Mothman, that's okay. It just means you aren't from West Virginia, haven't seen 2002 film, or read the book, The Moth Prophecies, or haven't played Fall 76 recently. As far as urban legends go, though, Mothman is actually a pretty good one. Ground zero for the story and home of the annual Mothman Festival and Mothman Museum is Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where supposedly from November 1566 to December 1567, the Mothman was seen repeatedly by people who definitely hadn't been drinking too much moonshine. Moonshine! It all began when two couples traveling along saw a, quote, large flying man with 10-foot wings, unquote. Just days later, two volunteer firemen saw it and said it was a, quote, large bird with red eyes, unquote. Several other people also reported seeing the Mothman during this time. On December 15th, 1967, 46 people were killed when the Silver Bridge that connects Point Pleasant and Galapagos, Ohio, collapsed. Two of the victims were never found, and naturally, this catastrophic event was blamed on the Mothman by many locals. According to the book, The Baby Train and Other Lusty Urban Legends, folklorist Jan Harold, that guy, so Jan from earlier that we talked about in the wiki article, claims that the Mothman has also been associated with UFOs attacking the roofs of parked cars occupied by teenagers, which actually, that harkens back to the Dover Demon, back in our very first episode of the series, and a military shortage site, which people believe was the Mothman's home, quote unquote. The Mothman was also purportedly spotted prior to the 1999 Russian apartment bombings in the cities of Bunyansk, Moscow, and Volgodonsk, when there were reported 55 sightings of Mothman in Chicago in 2017. Sorry if I'm stuffy. On September 24, which brings us to today's story. On September 24th, a 17-year employee of the United States Postal Service working at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport claims she had an encounter with, quote, some kind of very, very large bird almost 7 feet tall, unquote. The woman who asked to remain anonymous told her story to UFO Clearinghouse. All right. So this was in 2020. Let's remember that in Chicago. Okay. I had just left work at the USPS sorting facility at the O'Hare Airport at about 11 p.m. on Thursday, the 24th September, and was walking out to my car when I saw something standing at the far end of the parking where I usually park. That was a lot of parking. At first, I thought it was a very tall person with a long coat. As I got closer to my car, I unlocked my car, which caused my headlights to come on. My headlights hit the person standing about 20-25 feet from my car, causing it to turn and look right at me. I saw that this was not some person, but some red-eyed, and what appeared to be a coat were actually wings, which it spread out as it turned to look at me. At first, I thought it was some kind of very, very large bird, but I've never seen any bird that stood almost 7 feet tall. I'm 5'4", and this thing looked taller than me by at least 2 feet. This thing then started making some type of chirping sound, almost a half chirp, half click, like someone was clicking their tongue, but much faster. And then made some type of screeching sound, and then took off running toward me. It cut within 10 feet and took off in the air and flew above me. I was screaming hysterically as I crouched down behind car's open door, and I dived into my car head first. I was in a near panic as I tried to start the car and close and lock the doors, turn on my interior lights. I started my car and took off out of the parking lot, flew down the road until I hit the main road. I got home and told my husband, who also works at the same facility. He was the one who told me about the sightings of this thing. I was scared. That word. I was scared. And hope I never see this thing again. This thing is roaming around the area, scaring people half to death. I hope the airport people decide to do something about this thing someday. This is not the first time that the Mothman has been spotted near O'Hare International Airport. From September to November of 2019, at least 3 people claimed to have seen the Mothman near O'Hare. One was a person outside O'Hare. Another was a man who was attending a wedding 3 miles away at the Edward Hotel in Rosemont. And then a driver claimed to have seen the Mothman as he was picking up a load near O'Hare. And that's it. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if it's very helpful to us today, but it's interesting. What happens if we just look up Mothman sightings? Really? Really? Alright. Yeah, that photo is right. Okay. Look, I'm all for assuming things can be real, but that was just too perfect. An ode to a hometown creature, Mothman of Point Pleasant, Smithsonian. Yeah, it just goes over the history. Yeah, right here. Since then, this is on Folklife. Since then, Mothman seems to have kept to himself until recently. In 2019, accounts of a flying moth creature in Chicago stoked the paranormal creature craze. But as he makes national news once again, an NPR inquiry was entitled The Case of the Chicago Mothman. Lovers of the unknown and unsubstantiated should remember exactly where his roots lie and where a 12-foot tall statue of his likeness by Bob Rowe stands Point Pleasant. Yeah, but that's... I mean, really? Don't discount Chicago just because you want tourism in Point Pleasant. I'm just saying. Yeah, again, this is all just... honestly, a lot of these seem very ad-esque for Point Pleasant. Which makes it a little difficult because... like, yeah, I want to do research into this, but I don't want to sit here and read an ad pamphlet of why I should go visit Point Pleasant, you know? I'm just saying. Over 100 sightings, yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. We're just about to hit an hour of stream. I think that's pretty good. So, at the very least, there's a history lesson on the Mothman, where it stands today, and kind of whatever you want to think about it. I mean, it's a Mothman. It was here for the Silver Bridge. I tried looking into the Russian sightings. Couldn't find anything there. Yeah, I might have been able to go a little bit deeper, but... it's very Point Pleasant-centric, which makes sense, but even like compared to the Dover Demon, it's not about Dover. It's about the demon. Mothman isn't really about Mothman. It's about Point Pleasant, which it's frustrating. But either way, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like button. Show support because you know more videos just like this one. Thank you to everybody who has viewed these live streams, who has come in, and who has left a like, or even just interacted with a video or anything like that. I would be willing to do a part 2 of the Mothman. But for now, I feel like we at least got all the history down. You know, if we ever wanted to go over footage or photos or something, we could definitely do that one day in the future. And I wanted to give a shout out to the members on this channel, currently Apocalypse Super and Lord Taco. Thank you both for being members of the channel. If you would like to be a member of the channel, there are exclusive rewards with that per member tier that you choose to join. They are on the channel at $2, $7, $15 respectively. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember, somebody somewhere loves you, even if they don't know it yet, and Jesus loves you. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Take it easy. Take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday at 7 p.m. for another installment of the Whistler's Cryptid Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.